Good evening, everybody, and welcome into the show here live at the Main Street Pub in Allendale. Steve Lloyd-Jones alongside DJ Foster as well, and head coach Matt Mitchell. Well, Grand Valley 3-0, the win over Northern Michigan last Saturday, 50-24, the final score. We're going to get into that one a little bit for you, break that down. This week, of course, we'll look ahead to Week 4, the battle at Walsh University. First time the Lakers have played them. They'll be on the road, and a lot of other things in store tonight. DJ, what have we got?
Yeah, we'll obviously bring in head coach Matt Mitchell in the next segment. Offensive coordinator Tim Morrison and starting center Aaron Cox. A lot of big guys coming on the show. And as you mentioned, we'll talk about the Walsh Cavaliers, a brand new opponent for Grand Valley State. We'll find out a little bit about them from Coach Mitchell.
Yeah, the Lakers with 3 straight at home, now with 2 straight on the road. This is the first of the 2, as Grand Valley sitting a perfect 3-0. We'll get started with the GVSU Football Weekly Report right after this on the Grand Valley Sports Network.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
And welcome back to the GVSU Football Weekly Report with Matt Mitchell. DJ Foster here with you. That was Laker play-by-play boy Steve Lloyd-Jones calling one of 3 Marty Carter touchdown runs last week. Marty had a pretty decent game. We're going to talk about him a little bit here throughout the show as Grand Valley State defeated Northern Michigan last Saturday night 50-24 in the second largest crowd in Lubbers Stadium history. We bring in head coach Matt Mitchell now. And, Coach, I just mentioned one of the best crowds we've ever seen and the best offensive performance we've ever seen by a Grand Valley State team, 741 yards. Your defense was pretty good, especially in the first half, but the offense was the best it's ever been in Laker history.
Yeah, I think there's some factors involved in that. I think first of all, we had a great game plan heading into the affair, which was great. A lot of credit to our offensive staff. I'd mentioned this in some of the things leading up to the game. You're talking about a new defensive coordinator. We only had 2 games of tape. But luckily we were able to, put some things on down in terms of game plan process to get off to a good start. And then, what Bart Williams did for our offense besides the physical things was really important. He got us into some run calls and did some things that really helped out our offense. So great job by our staff and our players coming out and really firing all cylinders. I also think, too, that part of the reason is, the contest, was extended a little bit more than the first couple of contests, and so we were – in the third quarter, it didn't play as well defensively as maybe we're capable of, and so we felt like we had to keep staying aggressive on the offensive end, and we were able to answer some scores and do some things. But, yeah, it's hard to complain when you take a look at both the individual statistics and then obviously what's more important to us is, first, besides the win, is take a look at the big picture and everybody getting it done together. And we racked up a lot of yards and had a lot of success.
Couple parts to the question, Mitch. One, your feelings on how you went against Shea Brown in the first half. You seem to have a lot of success, and one of the things you were looking for was improved kick coverage or kick returns. You were happy with your kick coverage coming in. So address both of those from the game.
Yeah, I think first of all, we'll start with the special teams, near and dear to my heart. Our kickoff coverage was not as good as dominant as been the first couple of weeks. I think there's, like anything else in athletics, there's not just one single factor, it's a combination of factors. So, to talk a little bit about that, Northern Michigan has some explosive returners. They do have some athletes, and so they did a good job. I think what's happening right now a little bit with our special teams, I'm trying to make a concerted effort to try to get some younger players in our program heavily involved in the special teams. We have a lot of redshirt freshmen out in the field and some other guys, and so that's a good thing for Grand Valley football. I don't have some of our top line guys on there, like Garrett Pune is not on any special teams. We rarely have a lot of the starters on special teams. And so I'm trying to get some of those guys to have a way to chip in, and what ended up happening on the first kickoff return, We were a little bit out of position. A couple of our guys were down on the ground. Whether they got pulled down or not, that's up for debate, but they were down on the ground. And we started to lose a little bit of faith in the coaching. We started to lose a little bit of faith in our teammates. We started to lose a little bit of faith in working together to get the job done. And so we started having some guys on the kickoff coverage go a little rogue on me and trying to make plays on their own. And they weren't working in conjunction with their teammates in regards to the coverage. And so as painful as that may be in terms of the tape and watching what happened, it's not a bad thing from a standpoint of it allowed me on Sunday to come in and we watched the tape with those guys, and it was a great teaching moment. A lot of times some of your best personal growth occurs in times of failure. When things are going good, I think you sometimes take things for granted. And so the first two games, we had great kickoff coverage. We were down there, everybody's there. We were fogging them and getting a lot of stops. And I think Northern Michigan did a good job, and we also started to lose a little bit of faith in what was get done. So it was good to get back to those basics and show that. And so that was poor. Obviously, our kickoff coverage was poor. The flip side of it is, glass half full. It put our defense in some precarious spots. They had to go out there with some shorter fields and be able to try to defend in some situations. And so that's not a bad thing. I think there's going to be challenges that are coming. We might have some challenges on Saturday. We might have some adversity on Saturday. For our defense to be thrown in some of those adverse situations was very good for them. I talked about this at the press conference on Monday. We give up the surprise onside to start the second half. That wasn't very good. Our defense went out and got a 3-and-out. That's a great reaction to adversity by our starting defensive unit. We give up you could go out there, you could hang your head, you could be mopey about what just happened. They went out there and they attacked that particular series and got off the field. So that's a subtle thing, but right. It's a really big thing when you talk about the approach and how we get things done. In regards to Shea Brown, I thought in the first half, Northern Michigan was trying to do a good job of kind of establishing the run. I think the first couple series they tried to run the ball a little bit and do some things. We did a good job kind of fitting up the run, and then we were very aggressive on the edges. They were trying to throw some stuff out quick. Things would get on the edges, and then we also got after them on third down. And we gave up a little bit of yardage, between the middle portion of the field, but I thought that was really great that we buckled down inside the high red zone and the red zone, got some stops, got some pressure on them, got them off the game. And that was probably the biggest difference, in that third quarter. We gave up a few more chunk runs, Steve, in the third quarter, which you can't fall asleep against spread teams and giving up a little bit of runs. We just had a couple misfits there. And then, the one of the touchdowns came on 3rd and 9, a third down situation, which would have been great on the year. And they made a play. Kid made the play down the field a little bit. So it's okay. Obviously, you want to have dominant performances every time you want to take the field. But I don't know that necessarily was a bad thing for our defense to have some stress, some anxiety, some adversity. I think that's going to help us as we move forward in 2015 or 16. I'm sorry. It's easy to say that as a coach, but you also have to give credit to Northern Michigan. I mean, Shea Brown, I talked about him a lot. Like they're going to make some plays too. They're going to make some plays, and so you got to keep battling. You got to keep fighting. And I will give our defense credit. Even after we gave up one of those touchdown drives, we kept battling. We kept fighting, and those are important in terms of the growth process.
Yeah, he made some very, very good throws.
Talking about Grand Valley State's 50-24 victory over Northern Michigan last Saturday night. Reminder: this segment is brought to you by Cardinal Buses. Go in comfort, go in style, and go green. Go with Cardinal Buses. And Coach, I can't go any further without asking about Marty Carter, the back-to-back LEAC Offensive Player of the Week. He had 20 carries for 298 yards, an average of just under 15 yards per carry, scored 3 touchdowns. He was the National Offensive Player of the Week from D2Football.com. Why was he able to be so efficient and successful on Saturday night?
Well, his successes, again, are a combination of factors. Obviously, a lot of it has to do with Marty. He's a really gifted running back. He's a good player. We talked about him in last week's radio show. He's got a lot of a very unique skill set and a lot of talents. He's a very talented player, very talented young man, both on and off the field. So some of it has to do with them. But he wasn't going to go out there and do it themselves. There was other things that were played into factor with that. I think when you take a look at 2016, our tight end play is really strong right now. You're talking about Nick Kaiser, who is a junior now. He's 1 year older. He played quite a bit as a sophomore in 2015, but he's just bigger, faster, stronger, more knowledgeable, and I think probably more than anything, more confident. Nick Kaiser goes out there, and I think he has confidence in his ability to block. We added Pete Sender, who was a transfer from the Air Force Academy. We added him last January. That was really big that he was here for spring practice and went through the summer workouts. Those guys are really helping us in the run game at the point of attack do some things with some of their down defensive linemen. We're running more downhill runs. I mentioned that we brought in and we've spent a lot of time as a staff trying to continue to work and tweak our run game. And so the pistol formation, I think, is very advantageous to Martavius Carter. I think that he likes having his shoulders square. Now, there are some runs where he gets east and west, but he likes having his shoulders square. And, Bart Williams, our quarterback, has got us into some great run looks and done some things to the line of scrimmage that go unseen. And then our wide receivers, I think we have a very unselfish group of wide receivers. The first 3 games, we've had different guy be the leading receiver, I think, all 3 games. And so those yardage and touches also carry over to how they approach things from the blocking perspective. And there's some blocks that those guys had downfield that really sprung a lot of those explosive runs. As you mentioned, all those yards, the 298 he had, only came on 20 carries, which is very remarkable. It's one thing to have a running back carry it 35 times and get that yardage. To only carry it 20 times and get that yardage, I think, is the most eye-popping statistic. And that has to do with everybody. It's all everybody, coaches and players working together. And I think that's what Grand Valley football should be about, and hopefully is about in 2016 as a collective effort. And he's going to get the D2 Player of the Week and all these awards that he gets in the GLIAC and stuff. But I never retweeted it one time. I never mentioned that one time in our building. We don't really care about that down in our building. The fact that he has yards, that's good for our offense. But the reason he got all those yards was the collective effort of coaches and players working together to achieve success.
Mitch, last question for you here in the segment. Through 3 games, you've been able to see a lot of guys play, which was one of the benefits of, getting out to those big leads, and you've been able to look at what you have on your roster, some of the younger guys. Who's making a move? Who's starting to climb that depth chart and emerge?
Well, on the defensive side of the ball, he's played a lot here in the first 3 games, both the special teams and also has gotten in there when our first line group is Jalen Harden is a safety, a redshirt freshman. He's from Indianapolis. He went to Ben Davis High School, so an out-of-state recruit. Jalen's, done a good job for being thrust into that position. I think he's done a really good job. Our redshirt freshman linebackers, Isaiah and Concept from Mason, Ohio, and Mike Pettis down from Battle Creek. It was a little rough in game 1, but they've gotten better. They've continued to kind of improve and get better. And then I think on the offensive side of the ball, Nate Brady is a redshirt freshman that's starting. And again, he said, well, some of these other guys getting in, but he's starting. He's playing quite a bit. And doing a good job. And then, we really like Bryce Young-Walls. Bryce Young-Walls is from Ann Arbor Pioneer. Right. He's playing on a lot of special teams for me. And I think you see when he gets into the game, we have depth at tailback. He's pretty good, and he gets out there and runs. So that's another redshirt freshman that's gotten his feet wet. And I really love Bryce's approach. He's a very competitive person, and I like what he's doing now. And there's some other guys along those same lines. So those are a couple redshirt freshmen gotten in and shown us something when they've had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, good to watch these guys develop. All right, into a timeout now. We'll continue with more. Coming up next, offensive coordinator Tim Morrison, also in charge of the offensive line. We're going to talk with him as the GVSU Football Weekly Report continues right here on the Grand Valley Sports Network.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
We're back inside the Main Street Pub here in Allendale. Steve Lloyd-Jones alongside DJ Foster, and great to have with us now offensive coordinator, offensive line coach Tim Morrison, our guest, the assistant interview coach. And good to talk with you once again here. Over 7 yards per play. He averaged last Saturday there against Northern Michigan, 3-0 start. The numbers are dazzling. I mean, you could really get lost in production, balance, all kinds of playmakers. What are you most happy with right now, and what are you wanting to see get better?
Yeah, I think right now offensively, the most exciting thing for me and our staff is that the way our kids approach practice on a daily basis. We're fortunate right now. We have a lot of kids with a lot of athletic ability and really good players for us. And so the way that our kids are preparing on day in and day out has been really, really fun to watch as they prepare and continue to build day by day. And along those lines then, really so far to this point, the unselfishness of our kids. You look at, 1 week it's Brandon Bean, the next week it's Matt Williams, it's Urson Smith. So we're able to really spread the ball out and have a lot of success with a lot of different people that we have, and really don't have a lot of selfishness right now in our program on the offensive side of the ball. It's fun to watch those guys encourage each other and be excited when anybody makes a play, and not be upset that's not their touch. Moving forward, it's really for us, to continue to get better on a daily basis. We talk all the time that when you start a new season, last year had no bearing on this season. And so we're trying to take that approach every single week. Last week was great, had a lot of stats, fun game for us. That has no bearing on how we play this week. And so, again, just watching and, really having our kids with the approach that every single day you got a chance to reprove yourself, and that's what we're trying to get done every day right now.
Going right along with that unselfishness, I thought it was cool in the post-game press conference last week, Marty Carter credited the Hogs, as he calls them, a term of affection for those who don't know.
Sure.
Credited the Hogs, the guys on the offensive line, for really springing him through those 298 yards. I thought that was pretty cool. Not that you expect anything less, because you said that it is an unselfish locker room, but you don't always see that. He went out of his way to credit those guys.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's one of those things that, Coach Mitch, every single day in our program is about the process and caring about the guy next to you more than yourself. And it's really fun to watch our team carry out that, that culture. And so certainly the communication between the offensive line and the running back is a pretty unique dynamic sometimes. It's fun to watch those guys interact and help each other out throughout the course of a game.
Well, you going over the list of playmakers. Again, Marty Carter on the ground. You had Brandon Bean, Urson Smith, Matt Williams with big games. We've seen Dotson make big grabs. But I know the defense dictates a little bit how the passing game is going to unfold. But Matt Williams really coming out again here in Game 3. Had such a great year last year. It's 6 grabs to lead you here with 118 yards. How good was that for him, having a big night?
That was very important for him. He's certainly a guy that, when you talk about having a ton of success last year and coming into his senior year, and it's really difficult going into the season to know how it's going to play out for you. There's no crystal ball that he's going to have the same type of year this year that he did last year for us. And so really getting him going was fun. Obviously with, Bean and Erston and some of those guys that have been having good games for us, it was fun to get him going because obviously he's a big part of what we do with our, passing game vertically down the field. And really excited for him. He kind of got back in the flow and really feel right now he's getting back to the point that he was last year. He's got kind of a hip that's been kind of banged up, off and on. And so fun to see him continue to get healthy and continue to make plays for us moving forward. It's going to be another addition, so to speak, to our offensive skill guys.
Here in the GVSU Football Weekly Report with offensive coordinator Tim Morrison, the segment is presented by Earhart Construction, the official construction company of the Grand Valley Sports Network. We talked with quarterback coach Matt Vitsom a couple weeks ago about this and kind of how Bart Williams deals with this. How do you guys deal with trying to spread the ball around to so many different guys? Marty Carter, the wide receivers, that quartet basically of big playmakers, Terrell Dorsey, you have, Bart Williams. How do you as the offensive coordinator try and at least set the stage for Bart to kind of just go out there and pass it around to everybody?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that, Coach again, obviously our wide receiver coach does a great job of managing those wide receiver position group especially, and really we're trying to play to every guy's strengths. Not that they all have a ton of weaknesses, but at the same time, all of them are really, really good and super skilled in very specific areas. So we do a really good job, I think, with our coaching staff of finding ways to utilize those abilities and showcase their talents, from a game-to-game basis. And that's why some weeks you may see one guy kind of have a little better game, not because their guy's necessarily playing poorly. Yeah, it's just the way it kind of plays out, and it's fun for us to find ways to get those guys, in positions to make plays, and they've done a really good job at this point making those plays for us.
Talking with offensive coordinator Tim Morrison with us tonight, also in charge of the offensive line, as he's part of the GVSU Football Weekly Report here, live from the Main Street Pub in Allendale. Coach, when you look at this offense, again, it's operating so well. You got to have the guys up front playing well. And going against Northern, Matt Mitchell said, last week, that's a pretty good front that they're going to face. How would you assess this group now through 3 weeks, some moving parts, new guys, young guys in spots? How is that offensive line gelling? It looks like it's coming along very well.
Yeah, I think again, I'm most proud of that room right now of really embracing the idea of getting better on a daily basis. We talk about every position group is doing that, but for our room specifically, we do have some new guys playing up there for the first time. And right now we've taken the approach a little bit similar to some defensive line rotations. I mean, we're playing 7 guys, very often out there, so it's not just 5 guys. We've got, upwards of 7 to 8 guys that are rotating in and getting a lot of reps, really trying to figure out truly what our best combination would be, but also trying to figure out, how can we keep those guys healthy and playing well throughout a long season that we have. And so really, proud of their demeanor and their approach on a daily basis, and it's starting to show up for us, on some Saturday nights. We were certainly disappointed, I think, with our week 1 output at the offensive line position, specifically, keeping Bart Williams, protected. So that's been a real emphasis for us here moving forward. And obviously, we want to run the football. That's how we're going to start every game plan. That's how we're starting every game, trying to establish the run. So that's important to us. We got to make sure Bart's obviously a pretty good player. He's got to be upright to be able to function, have our offense do the things we want to be able to do.
Well, Coach, your offense is averaging a nifty 50 points per game so far. We would like to see that keep going this weekend.
Yeah,
the
you
next
and me
couple
both.
weeks on the road. Yeah, that'd be great. Right. We'll see what we can do. That's offensive coordinator Tim Morrison joining us here on the GVSU Football Weekly Report. Coach, thanks so much, and best of luck this weekend.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
When we come back here on the GVSU Football Weekly Report with Matt Mitchell, we'll bring head coach Matt Mitchell back in. We'll talk about the Walsh Cavaliers, a team we've never talked about before here on the show. This is a brand new opponent for Grand Valley State this season. The GVSU Football Weekly Report is presented by GVSUTeamShop.com, and it's all right here on the Grand Valley Sports Network.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
And welcome back into the show. We thank offensive coordinator Tim Morrison for coming on the show last segment. We will bring in his starting center, Aaron Cox, in a couple of segments. We bring head coach Matt Mitchell back on with us as it's time for the opponent breakdown, brought to you by Kent Equipment Solutions, that turn work into play. Coach, we're talking the Walsh Cavaliers for the first time. It's a team that you have not played yet. They just joined the GLIAC a couple years ago. They're going to leave the GLIAC after this season, and just the way the schedule works, you only play a couple South Division opponents every year. So you've not played Walsh. They're 0-3 overall, and all of those were conference games. What do you know about the Cavaliers?
Well, they started and we got a mic check. There you go. They started their season up at Michigan Tech, and that is a very, very, very difficult place to play. They lost 33-7, and then they were at Hillsdale. That's not an easy place to play either, and lost 20-10. And they had a really barn burner this past weekend with Saginaw Valley. At their new home stadium. Usually typically play at the Hall of Fame Stadium in Canton, and that's under construction this year, so they're playing at North Canton High School. So they played Saginaw at home and really had some opportunities to win that game, but some turnovers hurt them. They fumbled the ball a couple times. So we haven't played them, but obviously you watch tape, and in the past couple of years they've been a really strong defensive team. That's kind of been their calling card. They've been a very active team, and they run around. I would say watching the tape this year, I wouldn't disagree with that. They have a couple defensive linemen that are very active. They do some movement with their defensive front, do some things. It's not a big front. It's going to be a little bit different than maybe Northern Michigan. It's not a huge front, but it's a little bit more of an athletic and active front. And they've got some safeties that will hit you. I think the biggest thing that they've struggled with here in 2016 has been on the offensive side of the ball. The new personnel, and then just trying to, find an identity and trying to find something, probably to hang their hat on. They've struggle to run the ball on a consistent basis. That's hurt them. And so when you can't run the ball consistently, it puts you in some bad situations, or sort of forces you to have to rely on your pass game. And so they're not converting third downs at probably at the rate that they want to. I think they're 19% of their third down conversion. So when you have an offense that's struggling a little bit to consistently get first downs, to consistently run the ball, to kind of consistently keep the chains moving, that forces you to put your defense back on the field. And so their defense has probably been out there more than they would want, and that's been troublesome. But there's been some things on special teams they've done well. Last week against Walsh, they had a punt return for a touchdown, which is a big emotional lift for them. So this is a team, I think this is a good spot for us. As I've mentioned, we're very fortunate here at Grand Valley State, both players and coaches, to have the support that we do, and for our home games. We had over 16,000 people at our last home game. It's a very unique atmosphere within the landscape of Division II. And so now this is our first road trip after 3 straight home games. So we still have a lot of young players and transfers and new players on our roster. And so we're going to have to do some learning this week about how we travel. I think there's 2 segments to this Walsh contest. The first one is everything that occurs up until the point that the ball's being kicked off, and then the actual game itself. So how we travel, how we do things, the way in which we operate on the road, it seems kind of a bit bizarre that we're going to be doing this for the first time and have some new experiences in 2016, even though it's our 4th game. Mm-hmm. And then, there's obviously the contest itself and the challenges that presents. So this is, we're looking forward to it. I love home games, but there's also a part of me that really enjoys road games. When we go on the road, you don't get ticket requests, you don't get sideline pass requests, you don't have we get a lot of recruits coming. We don't have any recruits. I kind of enjoy getting on the buses and going with our guys, going with our team, our coaches and players, and that experience. There's something unifying about that experience that brings your team sometimes closer. There's a lot of things going on in home games, a lot of things happening. It's just kind of us, the 58 players and the coaches getting on a bus and going out there and playing somebody. So I'm looking forward to it. I look forward to hanging around our players in the hotel and just being around our guys, or good guys, and you don't get those experiences as much on home contests.
Mitch, you guys have been, over your tenure, a good road team, and you were definitely that last year. When you go to a situation like this, or any road game from here on out, help us understand what are the key components to winning on the road? You guys were so good at that last year.
Yeah,
how do you do that?
Well, and I tell you, as being an assistant for Chuck Martin, we never made a big deal about home or away. I feel like I talk about it more in these type of situations than anything. But it didn't matter. Once the ball was kind of kicked off and you went out, you had to execute offensively and defensively. So the same principles apply. I mean, to sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but it is what it is. You can't turn the ball over. You can't give up a bunch of explosive plays, and you can't have a bunch of poor special teams plays and be a little bit undisciplined. And so those factors, home and away, there's really no different. But I think the biggest thing on the road is how do you get your schedule set so that you're peaking, like from an emotional standpoint, from a game readiness standpoint, not so much physically, but the emotional end of things, the mental end of things. How do you structure things, with your players and getting them to peak right at that time? And it's going to be different. It's a 2:30 kick this week, and not that I'm looking ahead, but we've got a noon kickoff at Ohio Dominican. That's a little bit different when you talk about the schedule of a day as opposed to a 7 p.m. home game at Grand Valley, which we've done. So I think the unique thing, again, my 13th year at Grand Valley, my 7th year as head coach, I got a pretty good feel of how to structure a Friday and Saturday so that we're heading out there ready to play. And all those playoff experiences last year, and really we won, 6 of our last 7 games were on the road and all that stuff. We got a good feel for how to manage our team when we're on the road. And I think that's, from an administrative and organizational standpoint, that is critical to making sure you guys are ready to play.
That's our opponent breakdown, brought to you by Kent Equipment Solutions that turn work into play. When we come back on the GVSU Football Weekly Report with Matt Mitchell, we'll get to the keys to the game for this Saturday's game. Again, as you heard Coach say, a 2:30 start in North Canton, Ohio between Grand Valley State and Walsh. You're listening to the GVSU Football Weekly Report presented by GVSUTeamShop.com. Authentic Laker apparel for every game.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
And the show presented by GVSUTeamShop.com. Authentic Laker apparel for every game. We're live from the Main Street Pub here in Allendale. I'm Steve Lloyd-Jones with DJ Foster and head coach Matt Mitchell. Heading into the Keys to the Game segment of our program. Keys to the Game presented by Fox Motors, only the best. So, Coach, as we're heading to the first road trip here over to Walsh, what are the keys to the game?
Well, I think Grand Valley State needs to continue to be aggressive. I think that's very important. You know, you can't go out in any contest, and this is no different in any contest, but, you know, contests like this, you know, you can't go out with the mindset of, you know, going to call plays not to lose. I think that's a big critical factor. You know, don't play the game not to lose, things like that. You're going to go out and want to win, and you want to stay aggressive with your calls. So defensively, we're going to continue to stay aggressive. We're going to get after it. Obviously, anytime that you get aggressive with play calls and things like that, there's a risk you might give up a big play or something going to happen, but you got to line up, keep playing, you got to keep swinging. And I think the same thing offensively. We have to continue to try to be explosive. We have to continue to be aggressive in everything that we do, and offense, defense, and special teams. I think that worked well for us last year and has obviously worked well for us up to this point. So, you know, I think things that we need to continue to get better at, the turnovers. You know, we did have the one turnover last week on the offensive side of the ball, and we really didn't get any on the defensive side of the ball. We got a fourth down stop, but you know, we've got to try to get a few more turnovers defensively. We're doing turnover circuits to look for opportunities to strip the ball. We need to, you know, have some people up front create some pressure and try to get some interceptions and try to create a few more turnovers. We have to have that type of mindset. So that's something we can continue to work out, is try to be opportunistic with the turnovers. And again, you see on tape, there's a couple times that's something that Walsh has, you know, struggled with a little bit, of some of the turnover stuff on the offensive side of the ball. Continue to do that, and then keep working. You know, keep working, keep coaching. Like, as I mentioned with the special teams, we're giving a lot of guys opportunities, and they have to grasp these opportunities. The window for their opportunities is going to start to shrink here unless we start making some plays. And so that's really key that some of these younger players on the special teams things embrace their role, embrace their opportunities, and start putting a good product on tape. And, you know, I'm really challenging some players to we always say in our building all the time, you are what you put on tape. I might have an opinion of you as a person, but at the end of the day, you are as a player what you put on tape. And it's really critical that we have some, you know, guys step up and take that next step of progression here in Game 4 and put a good product on tape.
You got 3 lopsided scores in a row, enabling you to play a bunch of players. And as you mentioned earlier, you can only bring 58 this weekend. So that's a little bit of a change up too, because I think you can dress as many as you'd like to at a home game. How does that affect, you know, maybe playing rotations and depth chart and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, it you know, it has an effect on us. We've been playing close to 70 guys here these first 3 games, so get it down to 58 is a little bit of a challenge when you start looking at the depth at certain positions and how you want to do it. And but I think, you know, we knew we had a meeting as a staff earlier in the week, and we kind of knew this was the way we were leaning. So, you know, the way that you make the team is as a positional player. You don't make the team. I think a lot of times there's a misnomer out there. Well, he could be a kickoff guy. He could be, you know, a coverage guy on one of the punt units or something like that. That's not how you make the 58. The first step in making the 58 is you got to make it as a linebacker. You got to make it as a defensive lineman. You have to make it as a positional player. Once we know if you've made it at one of those positions, then you can start to populate your depth chart with your special teams. And so it's one of those things we have to figure out, okay, who are our best guys, and we have a little bit of a template for how we do it at each position. You know, you got D-line, linebacker, secondary, wide receiver. Each position has a template of how many we're going to take. And, you know, we spent a lot of time at Grand Valley, as you mentioned, 6 of 11 games on the road, and the NCAA has a playoff roster for the playoff games. It's very similar, so we have a feel for that. So we start by establishing that, and then I go to work on special teams, putting guys in positions on the depth chart. So there's some administrative work that has to do with that 58. First of all, deciding who the 58 are, and then figuring out how you use those guys as you go through the contest.
That's the Keys to the Game, presented by Fox Motors, only the best. We will talk more Laker football when we come back after this short break on the GVSU Football Weekly Report with Matt Mitchell. It's all presented by GVSUTeamShop.com, authentic Laker apparel for every game, and it's all right here on the Grand Valley Sports Network.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
We are back inside the Main Street Pub here in Allendale. Great to have you along. The Lakers 3-0 headed to Walsh University this week. 2:30 kick. We'll be on the air with the pregame coverage at 1:30 for you all across the Grand Valley Sports Network. Time for our player interviews segment where head coach Matt Mitchell talks with one of his players. And Center Aaron Cox, our guest tonight. Time for the interview brought to you by Country Dairy, the official milk of GVSU Athletics.
Thanks, Steve. Joined by Aaron Cox, as Steve had mentioned, our senior offensive center. How we doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. Doing good. I'm awesome. Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, your path to Grand Valley State. Talk a little bit, the recruiting process, why you chose GVSU, why you chose GVSU football, and just how you got here.
All right. Well, I'm from the east side of the state. I grew up in McComb, Michigan. Prepped high school ball at Utica Ford. Played defensive end, and Coach Kaler was recruiting me junior and senior year, and he recruited me to play tight end. Never played that kind of offensive position. I used to play quarterback and running back, which it's hard to believe now, but I used to do that. And Coach Kaler kind of expressed on the tradition of Grand Valley and all the great players and all the great teams that went through, and that's something that definitely intrigued me, playing at a high school that necessarily didn't win all the time, so I was wanting to win.
And we've had this happen with other players. DJ Hogan currently is in the situation. Matt Judon was in the situation where you have a developmental red shirt your first year, but then along the way, you have an injury. In your case, it was an ACL injury, and you take the medical red shirt, and so this is your sixth fall. Talk a little bit about, the I wouldn't say struggles, but sometimes a little bit of the adversity that maybe came with having to take a medical red shirt and sitting out a season, and the mindset, and maybe in a weird way how maybe that made you a better player and how you grew from that experience.
Yeah, I received the medical red shirt for tearing my ACL, and it definitely was the biggest adversity I had as an athlete as far as injury. I've never been hurt like that, and for me mentally it was the biggest step to getting back to where I needed to be. But overall, it helped me grow as a person and also understand that football is a short window to play it, and the fact that I had another chance to come back and play was something that I truly take to heart every day.
Playing offensive line is a very unselfish position, but playing center, being a center, there are differences between being a center and being a guard, and guard being a tackle. So talk to me from your view of the game, and just a little bit about some of the unique challenges and some of the things maybe you enjoy about being a center.
I enjoy playing center just because I get to go against usually the biggest and heaviest guy on the other team. But for me, the biggest challenge is getting all our guys on the right page on where we're supposed to go for the play. If I don't make the right call, the entire offensive line's not going to do their job. So it's important for me to be locked in on my keys and my visuals to make sure that we're doing the right thing at the right time.
I think a little subtlety of the game is the shotgun snap. We used to be a team that would run some direct snaps where you obviously had to, directly snap it to the quarterback. But once we got Bart Williams and we knew his ability to throw the football, and he operated way better in the gun, we've been exclusively a shotgun team, except for maybe the end of the game kneeling it. But we've been a shotgun team. Talk about maybe some of the challenges with shotgun snaps and just having to snap a football in a shotgun formation, then get on your guy either in the run game or the pass game.
Yeah, shotgunning the ball is a little different than under center, like you said. The biggest thing is constantly reminding yourself to get the ball back there. The play can't start unless the ball gets back there. So the first thing is snap first, like Coach Morrison always says. So I always focus on making sure the ball gets back there before I can engage in my assignment.
All right, let's flip the script here a little bit. Talk about, from a non-football standpoint, educationally, what are you majoring in at Grand Valley, and what do you hope to do as you start moving forward with your degree?
I'm majoring in criminal justice and minoring in accounting. Long-term goal, I would like to work for the DEA or the FBI. Short-term, I would like to work for GRPD or the state police.
I know you have a great personal relationship with Tim Lolito, our alum that's in the NFL, is down with the New Orleans Saints. Talk a little bit about how that relationship was formed, and then how maybe your communication has been with him and your relationships that he's down there and you're back up playing here.
Yeah, I actually developed a relationship with Tim because I approached him, I believe it was my redshirt freshman year, and told him, I wanted to be the best player I could possibly be for the team. And he kind of took me under his wing and started helping me lift, kind of getting my mindset right for being an offensive lineman and teaching me kind of the subtle things that the coaches can't teach, of being a nasty player and figuring out, picking and choosing where you can hide things or go for it. So, but yeah, Tim's always been one of my good friends. He's kind of like an older brother to me. In New Orleans, I talk to him almost once or twice a week on the phone, through text or through a call. I've held that bond strong with him, and we're basically family.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I know you had to sprint in here to get on their show, so we appreciate it right here.
Appreciate it for having me.
Good thing we did all that conditioning in the summer. You got your breath up underneath it pretty quick. Conditioning's at a top rate level. So appreciate you being on, and obviously look forward to the trip this weekend, getting after Walsh.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, great to have center Aaron Cox with us tonight. Your player interview. We'll be back with a look around the GLIAC for you as the GVSU Football Weekly Report continues on the Grand Valley Sports Network.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
Again, our thanks there to center Aaron Cox joining us in that previous segment. We continue on with our show. Head coach Matt Mitchell back with us. I'm Steve Lloyd-Jones with DJ Foster. Did you get a nice break there, DJ?
I'm good.
You're good to go?
Yeah, we're ready to go.
Let's look around the GLIAC here. Of course, the Lakers, their game at Walsh this week. And do we want to do the question now, or?
We'll save that for the next.
All right.
We'll save that one more.
All right, we're going to put Coach on the hot seat next segment there. A little question for him. See if he's up to speed on Laker trivia. But around the GLIAC, Mitch, you got quite a game going with Ferris State hosting Ashland this week.
Yeah, we've only played 3 conference games, but ironically, the only 3 undefeated teams in the GLIAC right now are the 3 that made the playoffs last year: Ferris State, Ashland, and Grand Valley State. So there's a lot of football left to be played. But this is a big matchup. They did not play the last couple years because of the nuances in the GLIAC schedule, and we don't play Ashland this year. We do play Ferris, obviously, in a couple weeks. So, big matchup. Ashland is at Ferris State. It's Ferris State's homecoming. You're going to see, my feel is you're going to see a situation with 2 really good teams going at it. I don't know which way it'll go. I know Ferris was probably, rough week of practice up there just based on how they played against Northwood. So I'm sure their coaches and players are getting after it. And then, Ashland has very high expectations for their season given the number of returning starters they had back from their playoff team too. So be a great contest up there, and it'll start to, form the landscape of the league a little bit because there will be one of those teams that'll have a loss after this weekend.
Yeah, and then if you look past that game, obviously that's the highlight game, but there's a couple other good ones. Michigan Tech is at Hillsdale at 4:30, but even earlier in the day, the first game of the day, Tiffin against Wayne State.
Yeah, that'll be a really interesting contest. Wayne State, I think they have a good football team this year. Wayne State's only loss was at Ashland. They were, I believe, ahead at halftime at Ashland, and then Ashland had an explosive third quarter, and they had a hard time coming back. But Wayne State's a good football team, and they've got some games coming up. This is going to be a big game for them and a big game for Tiffin. When you start looking at the schools in Ohio, you got Ashland as they're undefeated at 3-0, and then Tiffin's 2-1, and their only loss being coming to us. And we've talked a lot about Antonio Pipkin. So last year, Tiffin beat Wayne State, put up a lot of points. It was kind of a lopsided victory, but I know Wayne State's got some guys back, and I'm sure we'll try to get back based on what happened last year.
That's our team landscape presented by Modern Office. Bring spaces to life. A little look around the GLIAC there, and as you heard Coach Mitchell say, Grand Valley State is one of the 3 undefeated teams remaining in conference play after just 3 weeks. When we come back, we'll wrap the show up. As you heard Steve mention, we will put Coach on the Coors Light ice cold question. We'll give him that and see if he knows his Laker trivia. But we'll wrap this one up after we come back on the GVSU Football Weekly Report. It's presented by GVSUTeamShop.com, and it's all right here on the Grand Valley Sports Network.
We were born here. We grew up here. Raised our kids here. Went to school here. We live here. We are the home team.
Back here for the final time in the GVSU Football Weekly Report. DJ Foster, Steve Lloyd-Jones, and head coach Matt Mitchell here with you. Before we wrap up, we'd like to thank one of our fine sponsors, Allendale True Value. Behind every project is a true value. So it's time for the Coors Light Ice Cold Question, presented by Alliance Beverage. Coors products distributed locally in the West Michigan area by Alliance Beverage. Now, this was originally going to be a two-part question, but I ruined part one by putting it on Twitter, and Coach saw the answer. So the original question was, Marty Carter was the first Laker offensive player to be back-to-back GLIAC Player of the Week. I was going to ask Coach, since who? Would you have known that?
You know what? I wouldn't have known that. I
Okay.
would have probably guessed, somebody here in the past 13 years. So your tweet of Kurt Ains was enlightening, even for me.
There you go.
Great
Okay, so
job.
Kurt
Great
Ains
job
is
from
the
our sports
answer.
information department, continuing to bring the new knowledge and dropping it on Twitter Nation.
Kurt Ains, 2002, was the last offensive player to do it. Who was the last player to do it? Obviously, it was an offensive player now.
A GV player or a
Grand
GLIAC
Valley
player?
Grand Valley player to be the back-to-back Player of the Week. Obviously, it's not offensive, so it's defense or
Sure.
special teams. And I can give you a hint if you need it.
Let's see, a defensive player. And maybe it wasn't a defensive player. Maybe it was one of the specialists.
Here's the hint, since you're struggling a little bit. He's on the team now.
He's on the team now.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go.
And don't look at Aaron Cox.
He's giving me number 5. I'll go Joel Skipper just as a specialist guy, but I know that's probably wrong.
It's a good guess. You might have wanted to phone a friend with Cox.
DJ Hogan?
DJ Hogan.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good for
2 years
DJ.
in 2013 against Northwood and Hillsdale, consecutive weeks. Back-to-back Player of the Week.
I'll be damned. Never would have known that.
There you go.
There you go.
Well, coming
Follow
off
that, Steve. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was going to say, wow,
top that.
how to top that. Now, you're going on the road here, and you were mentioning how kind of it's a challenge, but it's fun for you. You're going on the road. You had such big wins last year on the road, too. And how about the guys? What do they talk about with this going on a road trip?
The players tend to stay on one end of the bus, and the coaches are on the end of the bus. So, no. I think the bus trips are an opportunity, first of all, to sleep. They provide an opportunity for those guys to catch up on some sleep. We usually let the players dictate the movie selection, which can be interesting, for me. But you do get caught up on some current stuff that you've been missing because you've been working a little bit. And then, they do some things academically. They still got to maintain some things. Those guys in the back of the bus kind of doing some of that. So we try to break it up. We're going to stop halfway on this bus trip. We're going to do a walkthrough at the University of Toledo. That's one thing that's been really a lot of the MAC schools are very gracious, and if they don't have a home game, they'll allow us to use their stadiums. We'll stop at UT for the road trip here to do a walkthrough, and then next week with Ohio Dominican, we stop at Bowling Green. And they just let you use those facilities for free and get on their field. So that's very cool, those athletic departments to let us kind of do that. And I like to break them up. It's going to be about a 5.5 hour trip, and you could get out and kind of stretch around a little bit. But I tell you the other thing is, we separate the buses offensively and defensively. I jump on the defensive bus, and so it's a kind of a time too as us coaches, as staff, to kind of hang out and talk about some things. I think we have a video system now that when we're done with the game, we can watch the contest on our laptops on the way home. We can watch the game that just happened. And so I'll sit there as the head coach, and I'll watch offense, defense, and special teams and take some notes. And the defensive guys are right there, and so we can talk through some stuff like, hey, how are we playing this coverage? What's going on? There's a little bit of talk on the way home, and then Saturdays being game days too. We take the opportunities, coaches and players. I do too. We got ESPN3 mobile app, which small plug GVSU is involved on that in the deal. But you pop up a game that's being shown on ABC or something like that. You watch it on your iPhone and put in the headphones and watch a little bit of football on the way home too. So plenty of stuff to do when you're on a bus.
All right, great stuff tonight, guys, as we wind things down. Big thank you to offensive coordinator Tim Morrison for being our guest tonight, along with center Aaron Cox. Again, the game time, 2:30 Saturday here on the Grand Valley Sports Network. For DJ Foster and head coach Matt Mitchell, I'm Steve Lloyd-Jones. Thanks for listening to the GVSU Football Weekly Report on the Grand Valley Sports Network. So long, everybody.